Welcome to the Sheen Center. Please take a moment to locate the nearest emergency exit as marked by the red exit signs. Those with mobility issues, please proceed to the Bleecker Street lobby through the doors in the rear of the theater, where a staff member will assist you. The restrooms for both the orchestra and balcony levels are located through the double doors to your left. We ask that you please silence your cell phones and unwrap any candies or lozenges. We remind you that photography of any kind is not permitted. Thank you, and enjoy the performance.
Good evening. Welcome to the January Executive Panel discussion with the Young Catholic Professionals of New York and the Catholic Finance Association. My name is Joe Putnick. I am the chapter president and the founder. It is really a treat to have you guys to help us inaugurate our year. If we had our druthers, this is our fifth panel we've done. We really like, instead of just having one person talk, we love to hear from as many people as possible. And we wanted CFA actually to be our first one back in the summer. And if you guys remember, Mr. Jeff Smith, we lost him back in September, but we've inaugurated every single one of our panels since then, honoring him, because it's a good thing to do, but mainly because he's also the guy who started all of these great groups and all these great ministries. So Jeff started the Catholic Finance Association, I believe, shortly after, about 20 years ago, he started the Young Adult Outreach Office in Catholic NYC. We wouldn't have that without him. The Legatus chapter of NYC, I believe, was followed by that. And then shortly after the financial crisis, Jeff started that. And Theology on Tap, he was just relentless. So we certainly miss him and want to continue to honor him. So tonight's agenda, I'm going to keep it very brief. Each of our panelists and our moderator all have at least a podcast or a radio show or regularly on CNBC. So as soon as they start talking, you'll realize why we wanted to make this nice and quick. We pick a virtue to talk about to help guide the discussion. We know it'll kind of go different ways, but tonight's topic will be on the virtue of honesty, obviously very important in the realm of any industry, but finance especially. We'll have Q&A. The audience Q&A will start right over there. Feel free, as soon as we wrap that up, to form a line and try to keep your questions short. And then join us afterwards at 310 Bowery, just around the corner. We got to be out of here by 9 o'clock, so that'll be an easy place for us to follow. We also want to thank the Sheen Center staff. They've been such great partners of ours. We hope to be here and continue to do events as long as possible. So it really takes a whole production team up here behind the stage, and we certainly appreciate everything. So we are approaching the Lenten season. We've got Ash Wednesday coinciding with Valentine's Day on the 14th. Our February event will be a Lenten retreat at St. Joe's in the Village. It should be free to our Belong members and then about $10 to non-Belong members, but it'll be similar to last year with the Dominicans and Father Boniface, so looking forward to a good morning together. Easter, we will let you know our March event. We're kind of figuring that out now, but Easter will be at the end of March. If you're feeling ambitious, we will have the YCP National Conference is in Dallas, Texas every year. That'll be in late April. It's a good opportunity to kind of stretch your legs and see a different part of the country and meet a lot of like-minded Catholics. And then the one date we do know, kind of the immovable date, is our gala with His Eminence Cardinal Dolan at the New York Athletic Club, and we'll try to get tickets out as soon as possible. Like I said, we've been eager to have this event with CFA. They've been a terrific partner, really early supporter. John Knowles, who's the president, has done a perfect job running this, in my opinion, and I've tried to take some notes on how he does things and kind of carry it through and how we do things here with YCP. He'll be one of our panelists. Chris McMahon, he's regularly on CNBC, Fox Business. I just found out he has a 3-hour segment coming up, just him and Maria Bartiromo, so there's no shortage there. And then we were actually supposed to have another person, but they ended up getting sick, so Karl Kilb was our February speaker, and we just kind of pulled him out of the audience. I called him at 12 today, and I said, Karl, I need you to be up here, and he obviously agreed, so thank you, Karl. So, like I said, each of our discussions, each of our panels should be guided by either a theological virtue, like faith, hope, and charity, cardinal virtues. These are kind of virtues we would say that kind of help us dictate decisions we make throughout the day. Our patron saint is St. Joseph, so we haven't quite explored this one yet, but the St. Joseph's virtues, and then tonight, There's so many other virtues we can talk about, but no more important than the virtue of honesty. This is, I think, probably the best summative of what we're trying to do in terms of YCP and its mission. CFA, Legatus, Order Malta, Lumen, whatever it is, we want to help connect you and kind of introduce those audiences. So we have a directory we've created through this app called Geneva, but we hope you do explore and see what all is out there. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our head chaplain. I think you all know him very well, but he's going to help moderate the night as well. So please give a warm welcome to Father Brian Graby.
Thank you, Joe. And as we reflect this evening on the virtue of honesty, we recall that in just a few days we're celebrating the Feast of the Presentation, also known as Candlemas. And that theme of light is very important for us this evening and approaching this great feast. Jesus is the light, he is the truth, and the more we shed light on something, the more we're able to bring it into the fullness of God's truth. And so with that in mind, let us present ourselves to the Lord this evening as we pray. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, we come before you this evening humbly asking your grace that we may be brought ever more fully into the light of truth, who is your Son, the way, the truth, and the life, and that our entire lives, our entire selves, may be lived in the light of his grace, that healing light, that burns away all that is not of you and brings us ever more fully into your goodness, your truth, your purity, your love, everything that your light shines upon. And we give this all to you, and we ask your blessing upon us, our conversations, our thoughts, our resolutions this evening. And we ask all of this through Christ our Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing? Nobody told me to come out, so I hope I'm doing the right thing. Nobody tackled me, so. Well, thanks so much for having me. I know that although these lights are very bright and I can't see everyone, I think I have some friends out in the audience. And it's a real blessing and honor to be with you tonight. Thank you to Joe Putnick, the president of this chapter, for his kind words and for his leadership. It's really been remarkable to see the growth and expansion of this chapter over the past couple of years. It's a really strong chapter of Catholic professionals. And I was just at the Legatus Summit last week with Jennifer Baugh, the founder of this organization nationally, and we were talking about how proud she is of this chapter's growth and leadership, and each of you for perpetuating the Catholic professionals' mission. Being on a panel with Chris McMahon and Karl Kilb is a pretty humbling thing, I must say. Chris and I have been friends for a decade. He's the best that come. Very, very high integrity, very high professional accomplishment, and very high passion for the cause of the church and for our country. And Karl Kilb, just an amazing leader in so many ways, really brilliant strategist when it comes to technology and integrating the church's mission into what's emerging out in the market right now. So you're in for a real treat tonight. I think we're going to have a good conversation, and I appreciate you all coming out. The Catholic Finance Association was founded 12 years ago as the membership association for Catholic financial professionals broadly defined. So think wealth managers, financial advisors, investment bankers, Wall Street people, traders, brokers, etc. We even take realtors. Really, if you can claim in some way that you're associated with finance, we will gladly accept your $125 a year membership dues and bestow a membership upon you. So please go to our website and join the Catholic Finance Association if you'd like to be a part of what we're doing. The benefits include 4 live events, usually 4. Sometimes we do 3 with a webinar mixed in each year, quarterly here in New York City. Man, we've had some great shows. Perhaps the one I'm most proud of was a couple summers ago. We had Kelly Evans from CNBC, who I'm sure some of you watch. She's the noontime anchor, The Exchange. Kelly Evans just had her 5th child last week. She's had 5 kids in 6 years. And she's a great person. She's a practicing Catholic, very strong in her faith, and she facilitated this panel. It was a Women of Wall Street panel, and we had 3 women executive CEOs talk about their career trajectories and what they're doing in business, and gave some advice to young folks like yourself. And that was just an example of the kind of thing we do. We also do a pinstripe mass every November. That's probably our best known tradition. Usually Cardinal Dolan celebrates that. He'll send one of his top deputies if he can't make it. That's at St. Patrick's Cathedral every November, and then we do a coffee hour thereafter. People really like our patio reception at St. Patrick's Cathedral every summer. We have beverages and food and cigars and that kind of thing, and just have a nice social hour for Catholic financial professionals. So the purpose of our organization is really to create community amongst the financial professionals here in New York City and beyond. We have big vision about where we want to take this thing in the future. We want to create a robust mentoring program, create a professional certification for a Catholic financial professional, which hopefully will be a coveted certification in the profession, but always continue that mission of bringing our members closer to the Lord. We're a very, very faithful organization that encourages practices such as daily mass, daily rosary, and confession at least once a month, acquiring a spiritual director if you can, reading Catholic books, associating with Catholic friends like you're doing tonight. These are some of the things that we promote within our membership. We have a podcast called the Faith and Finance Forum, which some of you may have encountered. It's in its 3rd year now, 3rd season. I think we have dozens, if not hundreds, of listeners to every episode. We'd love to see more join us, including everyone in this room. We've interviewed some great people on the Faith and Finance Forum, both from here in New York City and beyond, exploring the intersection of faith and finance. So please look for that on your favorite podcasting platform and also on YouTube. One day we hope that the Catholic Finance Association will become a national and international organization. Our history and our present are here in New York City, the capital of finance. It makes sense. But we'd love for this to one day become a chapter-based membership organization, just like YCP and some of the other organizations we're in. We're talking to a couple folks in Texas right now that are interested in that expansion, but that's the vision for this one day. And I think that we'll get there in time. Joe mentioned our founder, Jeff Smith, who tragically passed away this past September. Sadly lost his battle to colon cancer. This is Jeff Smith's dream. He was just like all of you in his 20s and 30s, very active in the youth organizations of the church, and he was somebody that balanced his remarkable career as an entrepreneur and as a corporate executive with steadfast devotion to the church. He would do anything to bring people closer to the Lord and to spread the gospel. One of his great gifts, one of the things that I will always remember about him fondly, he was one of my best friends, I miss him so much. He connected people and he brought people together, never wanting anything in return. Jeff Smith did it because it made him feel good, and he thought that it was his way of walking in the footsteps of Christ, who was always bringing people in and recruiting people and connecting them with one another and building Christian communities. Of course, the apostles followed in his footsteps. Jeff Smith did the same thing. If he thought that you would hit it off with somebody or maybe do business with somebody or just become friends, it brought him great joy to connect you, never asking anything in return. So maybe I could plant that with each of you tonight, that maybe we should do more of that in our own lives, to not always be thinking about what our personal agenda is, what our personal angle is, but to bring people of goodwill together, never asking anything in return, because that's what Jeff Smith did. So our theme tonight is honesty, and I just have a couple thoughts I want to share on this real quick. This is a very, very important topic. I think all of you would agree that truth and objectivity and just belief and absolute right and wrong, things are true and untrue, is sadly under attack these days. In fact, I had a friend, somebody I respect, call me when he heard about this program we're doing tonight, and he said, "Oh, this is great. It's never been harder for people to speak the truth than right now. So this is a good program to have." And I get what he was saying. I think he was referencing that the advent of mass communications technologies and the influence of the media and social media and other emerging tools, artificial intelligence, the ability to manipulate videos and photography and all the other stuff that's going on right now, makes it harder than ever to present the truth. in a world where people are very confused as to what that is. I get what he was saying. But it was one of those conversations, and maybe you've had this too, where you agreed when you were in it, and then afterwards you wish you could go back and maybe challenge it a little bit, maybe give a little bit of pushback. I know what he was saying, but I don't think it's true. I refuse to believe that today's world, it's harder to speak the truth than in the time of the apostles, or in the time of St. Stephen, or in the time in the early church when persecution was just ruthless from authorities in the Roman Empire and other, state actors. I refuse to believe that we were talking backstage about the era of St. Thomas More, who defiantly said that I die the king's servant but the Lord's first before being executed. Or the time of St. Maximilian Kolbe when, an atheist statist regime in Germany was persecuting the church and other people that challenged it. No, I don't think it's the hardest time, and I think that we need to recognize that as challenging as it is to believe in the truth and advance the truth right now, it's also not the hardest, I think, not yet. So let's kind of keep our chins up a little bit and keep that in mind, that the people that have come before us, the legacy that we've inherited, they have something to say too. If I can emphasize one thing to you all tonight, it's that telling the truth, practicing the Christian virtue of honesty is the key to everything that you want out of life. I'm assuming that you all hope to lead lives of good reputation, to have professional success, to be good husbands and wives, fathers and mothers, community members. The linchpin to all of that is your capacity to tell the truth. And sometimes telling the truth will be easy. A lot of other times it will be hard. It will be very challenging. And your capacity to remain steadfast to the truth, especially in those times where it's difficult, especially in those times when it requires courage, will, I think, be the differentiator between you achieving what you want out of life and perhaps not. I'll just say in my own background, in my own career, especially when evaluating leaders, and maybe some of you can identify with this, but there's nothing more hurtful, there's nothing more depressing when you realize that somebody that you respected, somebody that you followed, somebody, your boss, your manager, just somebody that you admired was a fraud and was not actually a person of integrity, was not actually somebody that told the truth. I hope you'll remember that feeling in the moments where you're tempted to not be honest in your own life, because each of you, just by virtue of your membership of this organization, I know that you have people that look up to you, that admire you, perhaps team members that you manage. The basic expectation they have of you is that you will be a truth teller, that in moments even when it's difficult, you will be honest with them. And even in those moments where you think that they're not watching and evaluating you, I assure you that they are. And their expectation is absolute. They want you to tell the truth. And if you hope to be able to lead people and influence people and to be successful, I think you have to be a truth teller. The culture is not our friend in this effort. Recent news especially, if you've tracked some of the things that go on in higher education, for instance, and this is just coming to my head, I don't mean to pick on that sector, but I'm sure there's lots of people in this room that have degrees from elite universities, respected universities. You look at the fall of university presidents that have been found responsible for plagiarism and even higher crimes, sexual harassment and other things. These are people that were entrusted with great responsibility that failed not because they didn't have a good enough resume or they didn't do good enough on the personality test or whatever. It was because they lacked the integrity to responsibly steward the authority that they had been entrusted with. So, and the world is always trying to make excuses for people these days. As Christians and Catholics, we don't believe in that. We think that sin is sin and wrong is wrong, and these things must be challenged. And as Christians, we're called to live a life that's absolutely good, to be saints, to one day, do good in this life, and one day be citizens of heaven. So we can't be the ones that are always trying to cut corners. We can't be the ones that are always trying to make excuses and kind of sneak around facts. You have to be an honest person. You have to tell the truth, even when it's difficult. So, what's the ultimate goal for us all? I think that through honesty, you develop a hard-earned reputation for being a person of integrity. And I think other people of integrity will notice that, and they will want to do business with you. They will want to promote you. They will want to be your friend. They will want to invest in the causes and the businesses that you're advancing. And once you're past that hurdle, then you become a person of influence. And your word is good as gold. So when you engage with the culture, when you engage in public, when you're in the media, when you're in social settings like this, people know that when you speak the truth. And they'll naturally gravitate to you. And one thing that I think you'll find is that when you start telling the truth all the time, completely, the people that know you will love you and respect you much more. And more importantly, you'll respect yourself more. You'll find it easier to look at yourself in the mirror. You'll find it easier to display courage because you've done it, even when it's hard. And that's what true confidence is about. That's what true power is about. When you set a high standard and you live up to that high standard, and people notice it over and over and over again, especially in times when it's difficult. And ultimately, when you've lived a life like this, the final stage is legacy. That in the waning days of your life, you can look back with no regrets, knowing that in those rare moments when you had the opportunity to do something really courageous and really good, you didn't run from that moment. Instead, you steered into it, and you did the right thing. And then when you're gone, the people that survive you, and Jeff Smith comes to mind right now, they will remember you as that kind of person. And that, I think, is the path to immortality. To be remembered as somebody who could be trusted, ultimately, in a basic way, because he or she always told the truth. So thank you for hearing some thoughts that I have on honesty. I look forward to hearing your thoughts on this important topic tonight, and most importantly, from my co-panelists. Let's call up Chris McMahon, the founder of MFA Wealth and Aquinas Wealth Advisors. Let's give Chris a hand, please. And Karl Kilb. Oh, by the way, you may recall that in our promotion of this event, we had Zung Gian with us. Regrettably, Zung had a medical emergency. It's nothing too serious, but it did take him out of the action tonight. He sends his regards and apologizes for his absence.
Okay, well, once again, welcome to everyone, and especially our panelists this evening. What I'd like to do is sort of set the scene, theologically, spiritually, to allow us to enter into a reflection upon and discussion on this topic of honesty and what it is in itself and how we strive to live that out in our daily professional lives. St. Thomas Aquinas, who is the great authority on almost everything, says that someone is honest by being worthy of honor. It's an interesting connection, those two words, honest and honor, by being honorable. In other words, it's living up to one's state, living up to the expectations that are set for someone. Someone is honorable and therefore honest insofar as he or she is authentic. So it's more than just a simplistic idea of telling the truth, right? It's all-encompassing. It's who a person is in the entire integrity of his life. And this relates to sincerity. The word sincere comes from the Latin meaning without wax. Now that might sound like a very odd etymological discursion, but it's entirely relevant. So in the ancient world, when you had a marble sculpture, for example, if there was a chip in it, you wouldn't go and carve an entirely new statue. You would take a little bit of wax and fill it in, and no one could really tell the difference. But it's not quite whole anymore, right? There's a little bit of phoniness going on. We're making it appear that this statue is whole and entire, when in fact, there's a little bit of filler. What we want is to be whole and entire, to be authentic, to be without wax, without any chips or missing parts, without any plugging in the gaps, as it were. And so that sincerity, that authenticity, gets to the very heart of what it means to live a true and whole Christian life. It involves excellence and virtue. And this is why St. Thomas says that honesty at its core is very closely related to beauty. There's a harmony. There's a proportion. Everything's in its right place. There's no false note. There's nothing of excess or deficiency. Joe mentioned some of the virtues up there before, and he mentioned the 4 cardinal virtues: prudence, justice, temperance, and fortitude. St. Thomas says that honesty is most closely related to temperance because it gets to that idea of everything being in its right place. Everything's proportionate. There's no amount of overindulgence. Everything's the way it should be. And so St. Thomas calls honesty a type of spiritual beauty, which is quite profound to reflect upon. Sometimes we can think of honesty in an almost childish way, like make sure you tell the truth, don't lie, which of course is important, but we come to understand this more expansive understanding of all that honesty involves, and telling the truth is an important part of that. But there's so much more to it. And so I'd like to, with that broad vision before our eyes, I'd like to sort of kick it off to the panel by asking them in kind of general terms, before we get into some of the weeds here, gentlemen, if I might just hear from each of you, and we might all hear, how have you found all of that, that type of wholeness, integrity, authenticity, being honorable, being worthy of someone's honor? How have you found that played out in your own professional lives for yourselves, the honor, the respect that you have earned and cultivated, and that you, in turn, have given to others whom you have found worthy of honor? And so, any thoughts you have, we'd love to hear it.
Sure, I'll get started. I think it's a great question, right? I think integrity, honors, everyone says it's important, right? Everyone says that's an important, incredibly important attribute, but so often we fall short, right? The beauty, I think, of our faith, the beauty of being a Catholic leader, and I do admire all you guys for being here because, right, you're young and you're starting this organization, so you're going the right way, but so many of us are broken, right? We're broken, and somewhere in the deepest kind of recesses of our own minds and our hearts, we think we're not worthy. I mean, for myself personally, I remember for years thinking I was kind of a charlatan, pretending to be this, pillar of the community, pretending to be this business person, and trying to be a good person, at the same time really not believing that I was worthy of those accolades. I think John said it so nicely about, those people that you look back on and say, what was the differentiator? What made that man an honorable man, an honorable woman? It was all about their integrity, and at the same time, personally, I found myself always falling short. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I thought I'm falling short. I love what JP2 said, right? This helps me when sometimes I'm feeling down. When he said, we are not the sum of our weaknesses and failures. We are the sum of the Father's love for us and our real capacity to become the image of his Son, Jesus. And I think that's what we have to remember, right? We were created by God Almighty. We were created for greatness. We were created, we'll fall down a million times, of course. I was thinking about that today, how many times, what did the apostles do? They fell asleep, they ran, they made many mistakes. They lied. I don't know him. It's not me. You got the wrong guy, right? But we are built for greatness. And I think a huge part of that greatness is our ability to get back up and brick by brick. John, I think you alluded to it earlier. If you're not happy with who you are, change it today. Start today. That's the beauty of this thing. We're all works in progress. You guys are in your 20s and 30s, in my late 50s, maybe Karl too. I wouldn't speak for you, Karl, but we're works in progress, right? Start today. I'm overweight. I'm living in my parents' basement. I'm looking at crap on my phone, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't tell the truth, I lie, right? That's a big thing. I use situational ethics. All that can change, and I think John alluded to it. If we do that, and brick by brick, we build a wall of integrity, then we wake up one day and we can become proud of who we are. Our spouses, if we're married, will become proud of us. You know, if we're in religious life, or if we're in you know, the single life, whatever we're called to, if we build that wall of integrity, I think that's the most important thing. And we look back, just as John said so beautifully, that's where we see the value, and that's what I've seen in my life. The people I admire the most, many of them are train wrecks, personally, professionally, in their 20s and 30s. And somewhere along the line, I made a decision and said, I was created by God Almighty. I have a responsibility, the best person I can be, and I don't think I can tell the truth. It's kind of, is anybody doing Exodus 90 in here? Right? The first day, you're like, I can't take a cold shower again. Then all of a sudden, you're like, I can do it. And I can't go a day without a drink or something to eat. Again, brick by brick. I think what happens is over time, it's a lifelong project, a lifelong pursuit. And those who I admire most in my life are those I think that have built that wall of integrity. Karl?
Sure. Thanks for those thoughts. You know, when I think about honesty, I think about honesty as the absolute foundation of all, right? Without honesty, what do we have? We have to be honest with ourselves and honest with each other. And really, there's nothing more important in each of our lives than our reputation and our relationships. And the only way to have a good reputation and the only way to have real relationships is to be honest. And, you know, I've thought about honesty many times in my life in many different contexts. I started my career as a broadcast journalist. And one of the things I always thought about with honesty is, you know, there are objective and kind of subjective ways of looking at honesty. And I think about when I started my career as a street reporter, and you'd show up on a scene, and it could be a fire, it could be a crime, it could be anything else, and you're trying to figure out what happened so I can report on it. And you'd ask a few different people what happened and hopefully get many witnesses, and you'd find out that they all gave you a slightly different account of what happened. Were any of them being any less honest than any of the other ones? Maybe. Or maybe they just looked at it a little differently. And that's one of the thoughts I'd like to leave you with, is that obviously we all need to strive to be honest, but in life there's a little bit of subjective you know, mindset into almost everything we do. So I would just ask you to do this. Always try to be as objectively honest as you could possibly be. And when you're speaking with people, maybe they're trying to be genuinely as objectively honest as they can be, but at the end of the day, at least some element of life is subjective. And it's important, I think, to try to look at things as objectively and honestly as you possibly can, and to try to give people the benefit of the doubt whenever you can.
Allow me to take this question specifically through the Catholic lens, because I think Chris and Karl did a great job, you know, tying into the professional sense. You'll talk to a lot of converts to the Catholic Church, full of joy, full of excitement and eagerness about, you know, joining the church and everything that's before them. But sometimes they'll have a little hesitation. They'll almost say, now that I know the truth, I kind of wish that I didn't, because it's going to be hard, because we're in a world where the truths taught by the Catholic Church are so frequently under attack. And it's interesting, like, sometimes I'll hear from, you know, friends of mine, especially those that work in, you know, the corporate world or, you know, in secular business, and they'll say, I'm concerned about challenging what they're saying at the DEI training, or I'm concerned about saying no to the invitation to go to the Planned Parenthood rally, or I'm concerned about speaking up in the conversation where the true nature of biological gender is being discussed, because I don't want to be socially ostracized. I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to be blacklisted. I don't want to be on a government list or whatever. Those are all real consequences, and I understand that. And I don't want that for my friends or any of you too. And I guess you have to be careful, but at the same time, there's worse things in life than being socially ostracized. There's worse things in life than being fired. There's worse things in life than having somebody who is living a lie say bad things about you. Those are real consequences, and I don't diminish them. But ultimately, there are worse things than those outcomes. And it's a smaller price to pay than our predecessors in the Christian lineage have paid. And I respect so much those people that are willing to stand up for the truth. Again, especially in those moments where it's controversial, where it requires courage. And going back to the theme I discussed a minute ago, years from now, especially when you're with your children, especially when you're raising your kids or your grandkids or your other loved ones, you're going to want them to look at you as somebody who's worthy of the respect that you seek from them. And you'll want them to have the courage to do the right things, especially in the moments where it's difficult. And your message to them will be much more persuasive, and they will be much likely to hear you if in those moments you did the right thing, even if there was a price to be paid.
So that's a great way to pose this follow-up. You know, many in this room, I'm sure, are pursuing a professional path, and there's a lot of incentive to get ahead, to maximize productivity and profit, and perhaps, and even likely, in environments where it's easy and tempting to cut corners or look away on ethical matters and so forth. And hearing this, you know, someone might be convicted and say, you know what, I need to get myself on a better track here. I know that the life I'm living, in a moral sense, in an ethical sense, is not the one that is pleasing to God. That I'm living out my professional life, my young Catholic professional life, in a way that is far too worldly, at a great cost to my soul. And I don't want that, because it's not only wrong in itself, but I'm not happy with the person I am or that I'm becoming. And I want to right the course here. But that might seem really daunting. That might seem really challenging. How can I continue to survive and thrive in this sort of cutthroat environment that sometimes prizes ethical shortcomings? If I really want to be honest, to be whole, to be this person of integrity, let me ask you, from your wealth of experience, what practical steps can young people take to make that change, to live out that life of conviction and sincerity without compromising their own professional goals and ambitions?
I'll go first. I guess it's a great question, right? And I think it's interesting because people say, well, I had to do it. The pressure was there from the office. And sometimes that's true, but sometimes we believe that more than the reality, you know? I think when you allow yourself to express your faith, it allows the people around you to express theirs as well. It gives them the permission to see that. When I see someone who's gone on their email, he, him, I ask, it's interesting, why did you do that? What made you do that on your email? And they'll say something like, well, I just wanted to be, I didn't want to offend anybody. I said, well, what, you know, are you concerned at all about offending God Almighty who assigned them that gender? You know, you may not want to be that kind of confrontation. We always say, engage in conversation, meet folks where they are, right? Because, you know, many things start with compassion, right? But ultimately it's It runs aground. I'll talk in a few minutes, Father, about a 5-step strategy to put this in action. But in general, I think the first thing is, as I said, brick by brick, build it slowly. What's fascinating to me, the people that make the decision not to engage in negative talk, the people who make the decision to uplift people, which is hard to do. It's so much easier. I'm very guilty of that, right? Thinking negatively, thinking darkly, and instead of saying, wait a second, I'm going to be a source of light. And again, just like many other things we do, if we're getting up when someone runs a marathon, they don't go out the first day and run 23 miles, right? They never do that. I think it's important to just kind of slowly do it, and keep in mind that in the workplace, even though in many times we're subordinated in our office places, I would actually encourage 2 things, right? One, if you have an entrepreneurial spirit, listen to that spirit, right? And there's nothing wrong with having the courage to strike out on your own at some point. Although it's hard, it's never easy. Each day it'll get a little more challenging. So that's one thing. And secondly, don't be afraid. Don't be well, that's what he said, right? Is that what JP2 said? Be not afraid. Cast the nets out in the deep. Go have a catch. Try not to be afraid. How many of you people know you're in the Young Catholic organization? They'll say, tell me about that. Do they say to you all the time, I want to get back to the church. How do I do that? And you say, it's easy. Come with me, right? So you guys are leaders. And I think I'd keep in the back of my mind, this one more that is from John Paul the Great that I just love. And I think we have to keep this in our minds as we're talking to people, because even though they're tough New York guys, like all these people have the tough New York edge, the reality is underneath we're all seeking something. And JP2 said it so beautifully. He said, it's Jesus you seek when you dream of happiness. He is waiting for you when nothing else you find satisfies you. He is the beauty to which you're so attracted. It's he who provokes you the thirst for fullness and will not let you settle for compromise. It is he who urges you to shed the mask of a false life. How many of us, me included, have felt like you've been living a false life? It is he who reads in your heart your most genuine choices, the choices that others try to stifle. It is Jesus that stirs in you the desire to do something great with our lives. We are built for greatness. And will allow the refusal to allow yourself to be grounded down by mediocrity. And that's where we all are. I think if we can start slowly and not make compromises. If any of you have been in a business situation, they'll say, let's go to this club or that club. Have you been asked to go to those places, right? And they'll say, let's go to a place you don't want to go to. And you've been there. I remember being in a place once in New York years ago. I went to a conference, and I was a place, and I said, and I wasn't making a big stand. I was just like, this is a place I don't belong. This is wrong. And I never went back, right? Never went back. And when I realized, guess what happens, you guys? They stop asking you to go. Because they start saying, no, he doesn't do that. He doesn't do that. And all of a sudden, it elevates the dialogue. So I think it's just those little things that we can do to help, build God's kingdom here on earth. Karl?
A few things that just, taking it kind of back to the business context, not just cliches that, that honesty is the best policy and let your conscience be your guide. These are things that have a real place in the business world as well. I started at Bloomberg more than 30 years ago, and I was the company's first general counsel. And I was the only in-house lawyer when I started in that role, and I built out a global legal compliance department and worked on every aspect of the company as we grew from a tiny company to a very large global company, household name. And what's the main thing that I used to tell everybody I encountered in the company? Don't hesitate to come up to me and always tell the truth. No problem is insurmountable if people are honest in confronting it. But if you hide something, it will fester, it will get worse, and ultimately it may be a much bigger deal. So anybody in the company, open door policy, come up to me, tell me honestly what's going on. And the young people that would come up to me and say, hey, Karl, do you have a minute? And I'd grab a coffee with them or find a conference room and have a quick conversation. I learned more about what really needed to be addressed that way than almost any other way. And the respect that you would have for those people over years because they were honest. It is the absolute most important thing that you can do in any aspect of your life, whether it's your work life, your personal life. At the end of the day, you got to be able to look yourself in the mirror and say, did I handle myself well today? Was I honest? And then if for some reason you look back on a day or a week and you spot some moment where maybe you could have given somebody some more time, maybe you needed to hear them out better, maybe there was a rush to judgment, don't hesitate to be the bigger, better person and go back and say, hey, wish we had handled that a little bit better. Let's try to do better next time, and please come at me again. Let's revisit that and try to help that person out as best as you can. But again, you need to really always emphasize honesty in the workplace and honesty even in your own assessment of how you're dealing with everybody around you.
Karl, that's super valuable. Go back to people, and I didn't handle that well. I apologize the way I handled that. Boy, that's the most valuable thing in business. 2 days later, 2 months later, I apologize for the way I handled that. Or I may have misled you, or frankly, I was uncomfortable and I said the wrong thing. And talk about building that wall of integrity. That's a great insight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris and Karl, I mean, both of your comments were really strong here. I don't have much to add, but this is one thing I do want to say. I think the key is to invest, in response to your question specifically, is to invest in yourself. To recognize that when you, to use the parlance might be popular here in New York City, when you come out as a practicing Catholic and that becomes a big part of your identity and you're vocal and you're kind of expressive about that, you need to understand that you're going to be scrutinized more closely. And especially if you're advocating for higher moral standards generally, you better be representing those standards yourself in your own conduct, in your own behavior. So you have to continuously be trying to perfect your own game, making sure that you're telling the truth, living a life of integrity. Is your lifestyle one that other people would see as healthy and positive and reflective of a Christian life? How do you treat people, especially people that you disagree with, especially people that might see things differently? Are you patient? Are you kind? Are you loving? Are you generous? You need to be the one that represents that so that others can see you as a model of the way to go. In fact, as you continue to enjoy success in your career, as Chris and Karl certainly have, in large part because of their strong faith and the integrity that springs from that, people will be naturally curious about why you are the way you are. And that's the opportunity, that's the opening that you'll have to say, let me talk to you about Jesus. That's really where all this started. So keep that in mind, that ultimately it's the person in the mirror that you should probably focus on.
It's a great point, the idea of being a witness to the faith, of being a light to which others are drawn, are curious, that you spark that interest that then opens that line of dialogue and conversation and please God with His grace leads people to the truth. One of the things we were talking about with honesty is that idea of proportion, of balance, of everything being in harmony. It can be very easy, I think, in this city and in pursuing financial goals to lose sight of that balance and proportion, right? Where that particular end, which is fine in itself to be successful in tangible, quantifiable terms, but that assumes an outsized place in one's life at the expense of what should be the much more important things, right? Our relationship with God and with others, our family, our friends. I'd like to ask you how you yourselves strive for and maintain that proper balance, and what advice you would give to the attendees here in terms of not allowing worldly success, wealth, to become all-consuming, to displace God and the really more important things in our life, like our relationships. How do we keep that harmony and balance?
That's a beautiful question. And I think it goes back to what John said. I think we have to say to ourselves, everybody matters. And that's hard because as you're working your way up, you have a tendency, especially in finance or in many of the careers you guys are in, certain behaviors are rewarded. Being short. My children would joke with me because a lot of times when someone used to talk, I'd say, which no one likes that when you do that, by the way. I'm going to speak now, so you stop. I did that for years, realizing that probably wasn't a kind thing to do, right? It probably wasn't a kind thing to do. Everybody matters. I think that's what we have to go back to. So it's how we treat our there's nothing more kind of less worthy of admiration than someone that's just looking up the whole time, right? And we were talking back with Father that we were at Medjugorje, and it was unbelievable to meet the guy that built the castle. If anybody's been to Medjugorje and been to the castle, the guy was a maniac car dealer, and he had 8 dealerships, and he took all his salesmen to Las Vegas. He tried to ruin their marriages like his was ruined, and one day, and his life was a mess, and his wife came home, his third wife came home, and said, "I want to get married in the church." He said, "Do you know who I am?" And the bishop said, "You can marry him because one of them was annulled and the other one didn't count, but I wouldn't marry that guy in the church." And she gave him the messages from Medjugorje, and he said, "I'm not going to read these things from Our Lady," and give them to him in Medjugorje. And he took the thing and he read it. He took the book, "I'll read one," and he opened the book up and it said, "This is your last warning." He sold all those dealerships in Toronto. He moved to Medjugorje. He built a place where they take people now. And they let religious stay there for free when they're visiting Medjugorje. It's unbelievable. So we don't need that dramatic conversion, right? But we just have to say everybody matters. Everybody's created the image of Christ. So don't do this. Do this. And say, tell me what you're thinking. Try to value each person. Harder when you're on your way up, but it's always going to be difficult, right? Everyone's not going to be, when you think I'm probably worthy of that promotion. I should have the one that was passed over. My bonus wasn't I was expecting it to be. We have to remember every one of those people is as damaged or we all have a cross, ladies and gentlemen. We all have to carry it. He told us to carry it, right? Follow behind him and carry it. We all have that. So we have to understand, what I love, Molly and I are deeply connected to the Sisters of Life, right? And if you've been down there to visit with them, what do they lead with? Joy. They're joyful. They look at you and say, "How are you?" And they're fully, so many of my friends will say to me, how do I wow, I really connected with that sister. Like, why did you really connect with her? Because she was joyful. She looked at me, and then all she wanted to do was understand me. And if we all could take a little of that with us, a little bit of that joy with us, and invest in other people, it changes the world.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, everybody does matter, which I think is so crucial. Imagine you're in the workplace, and somebody comes up to you. Whatever they're bringing to you, probably at that point in time, is about as important to them as anything could possibly be. No matter what's on your plate, how horrible would it be to be dismissive of that person? Do you think they're going to want to come up to you again?
Are you endorsing this? Is that what you're saying?
No,
I'm
agreeing with you that the hand is not the way to go, right? Or if you're going to use your hand, it should be this way. Come on over, right? I was very fortunate all those years at Bloomberg that we sat in an open environment. I was the chief lawyer, but I did not have an office. I sat out in the open. And I'm a big believer in that because I want people to come up to me. I want people to ask me questions. I want them to ask for my help. And I think the trick is no matter how much is on your plate in a given moment, and no matter how many things in your mind you might be realizing you need to address, when that person walks up to you, they have something that to them is extraordinarily important in that moment, and you need to give them the time of day. And I think something that's happened a lot, I've seen in my career over the years, especially now that we all have mobile phones in our pockets and infinite distractions, I reminded myself, shut my phone off while I'm sitting up here, because there's nothing more important right now than me speaking with all of you. So I know my phone is, like everybody else's phone, I'm getting a bunch of messages, but it's distracting even to have all those messages going off in your pocket. Imagine how distracting it is if you're looking at your phone while somebody's trying to bring a real issue to you, right? So I think one of the things I think everybody should be honest about is honestly giving whoever you're dealing with the absolute undivided attention that person deserves, and not to allow yourself to be distracted either by a phone or by something else, because in that moment, you kind of need to be honest with yourself and whoever you're talking to and allow that person to truly have your undivided attention.
Yeah, in terms of Father's question regarding balance, and what I heard you ask was kind of the relationship between achieving financial success, having some money, but balancing it with the the things that really count. I mean, today's world says that it's all about material possessions, right? It's all about we're a very consumeristic society. If you turn on the television or engage other forms of media, the person who's celebrated is always the baller, right? The one with the car and the money and the bling and all that. I don't know. I mean, Chris and I are very close with a guy named Tom Monahan. Chris served on his board, and I worked for him for a decade. And he was one of the richest people in the world when he sold his company in the late 90s. And he had all the wealth that a person could ask for. Fourth largest car collection in the world, boats, houses, planes, baseball team, you name it. And so he got to the peak of that mountain. He's been to a place that none of us have been, and he decided to give it all up. He decided that, he's been there. He had that stuff, and he realized ultimately how little all that stuff was worth. And he committed himself fully to the things that matter: faith, family, freedom, love of our country, patriotism, the values that the greatest country in the world are based on. So I guess the point is that the balance that I see, having learned from his experience and Chris's experience and Karl's experience through our friendship and conversations, is that, yeah, you want to have enough money to take care of your family and to have a comfortable life, to be able to feel secure and to support especially the charities and the causes and the church and all that, but you cannot let that become your obsession. That will never truly satisfy you. I would trade all the money in the world to hear my daughter say that I love you. I would trade all the money in the world to know that the Sisters of Life are out there doing great things for women in this city and beyond and pursuing their mission. Those things are truly priceless. So my only suggestion to you would be remember that your gifts, your talents were given to you by God at birth. Your job is to actualize them and develop them and bring them to the point where you can provide for yourself and your family and do some good in the world. But ultimately, the point of life is not just to pile up a bunch of cash. The point is to love the Lord, love your neighbor, and leave a legacy that you're proud of when you go to meet your Maker.
Yeah, well said, John. And yeah, I would just add, you mentioned, balance. I've said to people before, I've been blessed to have some nice corporate titles in my life, but my favorite titles are by far husband and dad, right? I wouldn't trade the time I spent, coaching my boys in travel baseball or being an adult leader in the Boy Scouts and going on class trips with my daughter and doing things like that. At the end of the day, those are the most precious things. And you realize it even more when your sons go off to college and you're no longer going on Boy Scout camping trips or coaching them in travel baseball because they've outgrown those things. And then you're just proud to see them become great young men in another way. But best advice I could give you in terms of balance is treat every moment as extremely special, because it is. Every day truly is a gift, and the people in your life are the most important things in your life, right? And give them your honest, undivided attention.
I was thinking about Tom Monahan. As John said, I was on the board. I was a vice chair of one of his many charities, and he in addition to the other ridiculous things he accumulated by his own assessment, Wine Spectator said he had the best wine collection in America. Restaurants, you've been in restaurants with 5,000 bottles of wine, and his wine collection was better. And he went to Rome because he's a rich guy. He got to go to Rome, and he got to meet John Paul II. And John Paul II looked right at him and said, "What are you doing with your life?" And he said, "I don't know." And he came home, and he was, he was, by all accounts, looked like a connected Catholic guy. He was doing things businessy, somewhat Catholic guy. And he came home, and he was building I don't know if anybody, you guys wouldn't remember Roseanne Barr when she was like famous. She was building a huge house, like a 35,000 square foot house in Iowa with one of her husbands, and they abandoned the construction. And that's what Tom was doing. He's building a huge house in Ann Arbor, huge. And it's funny, he left it standing because he stopped construction. He said, this is dumb. There's only 2 of us. We don't need 35,000 square feet. And he gave all the building materials away, and it stands there to kind of a remembrance of what he was doing wrong, and he gave away the wine. And if you go to his building, you'll see that there's artwork everywhere. He said, people were buying artwork from me all over the world, and they put it in boxes, and I never saw it. So now it's all on the walls at Domino's Farms. If you go up there, and you'll say, wow, this is great. What is that? Oh, it's a price tag, because if you pay that, all the money already goes to the Ave Maria University. So that's a guy who was 48 when he got the memo. And I think you guys are ahead of the game by being here. So remember what's important. It's hard to say that, We all have a tendency to look at our watch and say, well, baseball practice will be over at 6:15, and I'm coaching the team, and I'm going to race back to the office, right? That's okay. You got to do a little of that. It's okay to do that, but I think we have to keep it in balance. And just remember, everyone says it, but you're blinking. You're 58 years, 59 years old, and you're sitting up here, waxing poetic. So thanks, brother.
Yeah, and speaking of being honest, you realize when you get to be 59 that maybe you got to update your headshot. I remember that young guy.
I think the Tom Monahan anecdote is a great way to kind of flesh out and personalize some of the themes that we're talking about here. And I wonder if I could ask each of you, if you're willing to, and if you're able to share some experience that you've had where you were faced with a situation, perhaps not as dramatic as, a papal challenge, but where it would have been very easy, very tempting, very advantageous professionally, maybe to cut corners, to look the other way, to be dishonest, perhaps even not in an overt way, but in terms of compromising a little bit on that integrity. Or on the other hand, if there was someone you knew in your professional life who did in fact succumb to that temptation, and in either case, what lesson you learned from it and perhaps how you grew from it professionally as a result?
My behaviors embarrassed me professionally. I would cut corners all the time when I was a young man. I would think you have to do it, close the deal, right? Get it across the finish line. That's the primary thing, right? If you saw these movies of sales guys that are just whatever it would take, not whatever it would take, but I'd say, well, there's people so much worse by comparison. Have you ever done that? Well, I did this, but that person did this, right? That's the classic that I did, and it was embarrassing, right? It's just embarrassing. And I'll tell you a classic, but fortunately, as I said, when I started saying, boy, I'm not proud of myself. When I got married, I said, I need my wife to be proud of me. Her opinion of me is the most important opinion I have in the world. That's it. And if she's not proud of me, we have 5 kids. We're blessed with 5 kids that all live in this godless hellhole in New York. I want them all to come back to Pittsburgh. I'm sorry, did I say that out loud? I apologize. But anyway, my point is, okay, that you had to put yourself in a position where your behaviors matter. And an interesting thing happened this week, you guys, and it's easy at 59, right, to be a little bit more reflective. But our firm, we manage money, and someone called our offices and unloaded on one of our key people. It never happens. People are friendly in Pittsburgh. Someone literally dropped a pie off at my office 2 weeks ago, right? Does that happen in your office? That happened at Bloomberg? I don't think it does, right? Guy dropped off a pie, and she said, I was making these. I thought you guys would enjoy this. I love that. I love that pie she dropped off, like Aunt B or something, Anyway, the end result is that they unloaded on her. And this is a huge relationship for our firm, huge. Maybe 9% of our total relationships, 9% in this relationship. Completely baseless, completely wrong. And I thought for a second, I'm going to let this kind of simmer down. That was the wrong thing to do. I said, I'm going to let it pass. I'm going to let a few days go by before I react, because I was out of town, right? So I could have reacted later. I could have not reacted at all. I could have waited till the employee, who's a key person, who incidentally is my niece. She's married to my nephew. She would have been fine. She's a big girl. She's a vice president of our firm. She's great. She would have been fine. And I said, that's the wrong thing to do. And I was afraid, even now, as if this is 3 days ago, 5 days ago, I was afraid. And I called this person. This is the son of a great client of ours. And he thought I was calling to, has anybody in business ever talked to someone who's completely baseless but still on fire and coming right at you? Has that ever happened to anybody here, right? And he thought I was calling to settle him down and accommodate him and say, oh my goodness, how can we accommodate you? And I said, I can't, and I thought I could, even then I thought perhaps I can walk the line where I tell him his behavior is inappropriate, but at the same time, not offend him in any way, or offend him very, very little. And I realized immediately that wasn't a possibility. And I said to him fundamentally, I said, look, people don't talk to, you cannot, we will have to let your mother, who I love as a client, go. If you ever treat anybody in my firm, in our firm like this again, you cannot do this, period. And you're going to have to call her now and apologize to her. Otherwise, we're going to terminate the contract with your mother. And I can't believe I said it, but it took a while to get there. And guess what he did? He said, you're 100% right. And guess what he said? I'm just a New York finance guy. I said, I know a million New York finance guys. That's not what New York finance guys do. That's what jerks do and cowards do. I said those 2 words. I can't believe I said that. And I said it because I meant it. And he called up and he said, you're right. And he called and apologized. And that was an interest, and I could have gone the other way, Father, so I'm glad I was fortunate to have that courage. And I think part of the courage I got, you guys, is because I had been in adoration earlier in the day. Yeah. That gives me such strength to sit in front of the Blessed Sacrament and understand that really at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter what happens with this one client. What matters is doing the right thing. And I was fortunate to have the strength given to me by sitting in adoration to do that.
Yeah, I was thinking about how some of these issues even impacted career choices that I made. And I know, imagine a lot of you are, because you're young, you're in a career, but you may even be thinking about at some point a potential career change. And I was enjoying my life as a broadcaster, but always thinking about going to law school. And I didn't know any lawyers growing up in the Bronx and then later moving to Rockland County. And didn't really have mentors to talk to, and had a lot of perceptions of what a lawyer is or could be. And when I went to law school at night at Fordham, while I worked during the day as a broadcaster, as I was going through law school, a lot of people would say, because of your broadcast background and you like an audience, maybe you should go into litigation. Maybe that would be a natural place for you to go. And I thought about it. But then at some point, it just kept hitting me. Could I live with myself if I represented people that I knew in my heart were wrong, were guilty, were frauds? And even if I, got them off or helped them win, would I feel good about myself? And I decided I would not. So what I really wanted to do in my life was kind of pursue what I viewed as win-win situations. And to me, if you're a good business lawyer and you not only represent your side to the best of your ability, but actually look to create a fair result that's going to end up with a good long-term relationship with whoever you're doing business with, that at the end of the day could make you feel really good. And that's, I'm glad I decided to focus on intellectual property law and corporate law, and never felt like I was representing somebody that I didn't feel good about.
Yeah, real quick answer to this one. I guess never have the courage to quit, or never lack the courage to quit, I should say. If you're in a situation where you're just clearly, in a bad place, where the culture of the office or the behavior of the boss is just morally wrong, it's just not going to be the right fit for you. Just quit. You'd much rather be criticized for being a quitter or being a short timer or whatever than endure that any longer than you have to. And yeah, I've had to face that in my own career. I would much rather quit and be out of that situation than placate that and treat abnormal behavior like it's normal one day longer than I have to. In this day and age, you can definitely find something else to do. One job not working out is not the end of the world. Do not be around that type of situation any longer than you have to.
I'd like to ask the three of you how you came to the point where you are now. You are leaders in your field, of course, very successful, but certainly convicted Catholics who live the faith in a very public and admirable way. What brought you to the point where you are now? Was it Catholic schooling? Was it a strong parish? Was it sort of maybe none of those were factors and it was professional societies like Catholic Finance Association or YCP, or just like-minded friends who you support each other and help each other to excel in this? Because I'm sure for everyone here, there's a spectrum, right? Some probably maybe went through Catholic school their whole life and always had that network of support. Maybe others are kind of on the edge, never really had that, and are looking into it. But what would you say has been your foundation in getting you to where you are and sustaining you in that place?
I think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead.
Sorry. For me, it was simple. I heard a speaker once talk at a Catholic meeting. He said it was a drug problem, and I whoa, what does that mean? He said, well, my wife drugged me to church, right? And I loved that. I thought that was funny. And that behind every good Catholic man, there's a better Catholic woman. I think that's the reality of it, right? But I think for me, we had our 5 kids. We were super busy trying to build a financial services business, and at some point they grow up and they went away, and we said, wait a second, what is the sum of our lives, mine particularly? Am I the kind of man that's living an admirable life? And then of course, why are we here? What were we, as I said, we were meant for greatness. We weren't meant for, and greatness isn't measured financially. I think what happened for us is we joined the Goddess. That helped us quite a bit, much like YCP helps you guys. That helped us, and we went from lukewarm. We got a chance to go to Medjugorje, which I loved. It was transformative. A quick story about Medjugorje. My friend Kathy was there. She went with terminal blood cancer. She had led trips for 30 years, and I was with her there. And I wasn't there when this happened. She had terminal blood cancer, and as Kathy was there on Apparition Hill, she had gone so many times. She was sitting next to one of the visionaries, Mariana. And Kathy had never had an experience like this before. She was in between treatments of her chemo, so she felt good. She'd been leading trips for 30 years. What happened? She heard Mary, the Mother of God, say to her, in her heart, Kathy, my son has cured you, go home. And she went back to Hillman Cancer Center in Pittsburgh, and they said, your cancer is gone. Your cancer doesn't go away. Your cancer doesn't go into remission, and your cancer is gone. And I spoke to her oncologist, and I said, okay, it's about time to start paying attention, Chris. And that was an amazing thing. So that's kind of what started for us. It was these organizations and getting a little deeper, and then ultimately, we were inspired by the Sisters of Life. We opened a maternity home in Pittsburgh, and there's been a lot of graces at Fruits. That we run a Catholic conference in Stone Harbor, New Jersey, called Catholics to the Shore. I would have never envisioned any of this was possible, and it's only through the grace of God and, frankly, having a partner, my wife, that we partner on those stuff. So it's been a lot of all that stuff.
For me, I was very blessed as a kid to grow up in a Catholic household with parents that were products of New York City Catholic schools. And where I grew up in the Bronx, I went to Holy Family on Castle Hill Avenue in the Bronx for grammar school, then moved to Rockland County to Pearl River. And my dad had gone to Cardinal Hayes in New York City. And when it was time for me to go to high school, I'm the oldest of 5, my dad wanted me to go to an all-boys Catholic high school and get the same type of education he had as a kid. My dad's father had passed away in 1944 during World War II. So very young. So my dad grew up in a single parent household, and the Catholic schools he went to, St. Joseph's of Yorkville and Manhattan as a grammar school, and Cardinal Hayes, were huge parts of his life, and he wanted the same for us. So I'm the oldest of 4 boys that went to St. Joseph's Regional High School in Montvale, New Jersey. And my wife is also a product of Catholic schools. She grew up in Queens and Brooklyn. And we wanted our kids to go to Catholic schools, so they have all gone to St. Ignatius Loyola on 84th Street. 2 boys are in college now. My daughter is in 8th grade. And that multi-generational Catholic school education is just absolutely phenomenal. And what I love so much is that I've been blessed not only with Catholic school myself as a kid, but even seeing my children continue with the Catholic education and reviewing things with them, whether it's their textbooks or their readings or what they're learning about, the things one of my sons who went to Fordham Prep, the types of discussions that they would have with the theological experts that teach there. It forces you to continuously reevaluate and strengthen your own faith when you actually have children that are learning about all kinds of things, and you're having really open discussions with them. And one of the best pieces of advice I could give you in life is, no matter how busy you are, try to have dinner as a family every night if you can. And if you can't do it every single night, well, make sure there are certain nights of the week where it just happens one way or the other, and ask open-ended questions. Hey, how did it go today? What did you do? What was interesting in school today? And it's about the best thing you could possibly do.
Again, great thoughts, especially on the Catholic education piece from Karl. But Chris, I think you nailed it with picking the right spouse. I think that's a big part of it. The turning point for me was absolutely when I met my wife and when we started dating, and she was like way out of my league, right? I mean, this is like the first pretty girl that ever gave me the time of day, and she just basically made it very clear that if we were going to be together, I was going to have to step my act up and kind of cut loose some of the riffraff I was hanging out with and start living a little better. So I think that's really, if there's one thing you can do, the person you date, the person you marry or whatever, try to aim high and make sure that person is somebody that challenges you to be the best version of yourself. Because I know that that's definitely the case for Karl and Chris, and in my own case, I don't even want to think about where I'd be if I hadn't lucked out with my wife Jennifer. The last thing I would say too is the people you associate with more broadly, not just your romantic partner, your girlfriend, boyfriend, spouse. Your friends too, pick friends that, lift you up. Like when I was in my 20s, I mean, all I wanted to do was like go to bars and watch football with my friends, with other men my age. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying there is, but like, if that's all you're doing is just like talking about fantasy football and like, whether or not the Patriots are gonna, draft
Working on your
well,
handicap, that kind of stuff, right?
that stuff, yeah. You gotta. I mean, there's got to be more to it. And fortunately, groups like Catholic Professionals and Legatus and so many other great groups out there will provide you great opportunities to make friends that are of high quality.
So that was all a very strong pitch to make sure you join us at the happy hour at 3:10 Bowery following our session this evening. We're in the home stretch here, and I want to combine two final questions into one to the panel here. One is, broadly speaking, the advice that you feel is worth imparting to the young people here, whether it's something we've touched upon or have not yet touched upon, anything just from your professional experience that you think you would be remiss not to share with the audience tonight. But then more particularly, if it is worth tying in, how that advice taps into where you see things moving in your own field, the trends that are coming down the pike, whether it's related to things like we were talking about transparency and accountability, privacy, where you could see it becoming a particular challenge to maintain that honesty and integrity, doing right by others, one's clients, doing right by God. And so whether, again, that advice is just broadly speaking in general terms, or you have very particular advice related to some of these trends you see on the horizon, I think we'd all be very grateful for your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to take that question. And I tell people a lot, usually technology in and of itself is not inherently good or bad. It's how it's used, right? And we're going to see a lot in the next few years about artificial intelligence and about new search tools, and tech is constantly changing, right? Are we better off because we have the power of a computer on a mobile phone in our pockets? In some ways, of course, we're better off. But in other ways, maybe not. right? If we spend too much time looking at our screens, if we spend too much time distracted, if we allow screen time to replace real time, at some point, anything can actually morph from a positive to a negative, right? So we know we're going to keep getting more technologically advanced. It's up to us to figure out if that's going to be a good thing or a bad thing, right? Just because screens exist doesn't mean we have to spend all of our time on them. Just because we have artificial intelligence doesn't mean it should replace my favorite AI, actual intelligence, right? Right? So, always be true to yourself. Always think about how things are impacting your lives. I'm one of these people, it's funny, when Facebook came out, I'm still not on Facebook. I don't have a Facebook account. I am on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is crucial for business, at least for me, for networking. But I see a lot of people that get caught up with a lot of things on social media that, at least for me, are not beneficial. I'd much rather be taking a walk or just enjoying a day even in Central Park or almost anything other than getting locked into screen time. For you guys, you're at an age where you've kind of grown up with this stuff. So it's almost second nature that you should be checking your phone or that you should be on social media. But one of the best pieces of advice I could give you is that tech is going to keep evolving. It's going to keep getting more and more sophisticated. But think about how you use it. Think about how it impacts your life. And at the end of the day, people's personal privacy is crucial, right? People deserve to have their privacy, and people deserve to be treated as individuals and to have your undivided attention.
Sure. So I think that integrity is probably going to make a comeback. And one of the critiques, let's put it this way, like millennials and the generations after millennials get sometimes criticized for a lot of things. But one of the things I think is a positive thing is that thirst for authenticity, that people be real. I think that millennials and the generations that have come after them have a very acute BS meter, which is not a bad thing. We probably needed that. When I was in high school, my senior year was the year, some of you might recall, the Monica Lewinsky scandal broke out. And I remember teachers, people that I even looked up to at that point, had these solemn conversations with me where they would say, well, what you do in your personal life is different than what you do in your professional life. You can do some things in your personal life and be perfectly legitimate and credible as a leader in your professional life. They're not the same thing. And at 17, I knew that was absolute crap. And you all do too. So the point is that the ridiculous notions that were popular even a few decades ago are not going to sustain the onslaught of a generation that believes in authenticity and truth and being real. And when you see failures in executive ranks, like the CEO of McDonald's who was sleeping with a subordinate, or all these university presidents, or all these corporate executives that think they can, again, live one way outside the office and think it's not going to affect how they're evaluated professionally, that can't survive this moment. In a world where everything is transparent and everything is recorded and it's very clear what you're up to, it will be found out, you best just become a good person. It's not actually that difficult to make that decision. It's the follow-through that can be a little complicated. So for those of you that hope to be corporate executives yourselves, CEOs, wealthy and successful and influential, I think that probably the best thing you could do is just make a commitment to being a truly good person. And the roadmap to being a good person is very simple. It flows through the Bible, the gospel, and the example of our Lord. And if you do that, I think that all of the success, both in the material sense and the more substantive spiritual sense, will be yours both in this life and the next.
That's beautiful. Good insights, you guys. I think there's a 5-step plan. I think it's 5 steps, right, to start living that life. And I think the first is stop hanging around people that make you feel good about your mediocrity. Hang around the people that you admire. Mirror their behaviors. At first, you'll feel like a charlatan if you don't feel great about yourself. We all are riddled with insecurity, I think, right? You know the folks that weaponize their Catholicism? I know more than you do, therefore I'm better. That's not who you want to admire. You want to admire the person who's kind, open, and everybody matters. Just hang around people that you admire. Change your behaviors if you don't like them. This is something interesting along that second point. If that darkness creeps in your head, I would have been promoted if it weren't for this person. I'm married or getting married, I'm lusting after, whatever the case may be. I want that car, that job, that house, whatever it is. Try this, and I've been trying it, and it's effective. When the darkness creeps in, you say, and you say it out loud, by the authority of my baptism, through Mary, in the name of Jesus Christ, leave me, Satan. First of all, by the time you say all that, you forgot what you were thinking. Secondly, it's extremely powerful and important to say it. It's very important to say it out loud, okay? I think it's important. Demonstrate your faith. This is hard. Ask priests to bless you publicly. Bow your head in humility and have a priest baptize you on the street. I think it's very important to do that. Put a small crucifix on your desk, or if you don't have desks, put it on your computer. People see it, they'll stop, they'll treat you differently. You know, I think this is important. Befriend the religious, right? They need our friendship. They need our support. How many priests are in your cell phone? How many priests do you know you can call and say, hey, let's go get a pizza. I need your help. Let's do something together, right? It's important. What happens when you're alone? You get weird, right? We need to help the priests. We need to help them, befriend them, right? Here's something else I want you to do. I know a lot of people do a lot of folks here go to Old St. Pat's by chance? It's great, right? Beautiful, you're fed there. We have a tendency when we're young to go where we're fed and say, oh, that old parish, I don't want to go there because, I don't know, they're mean there. I asked the secretary if I could be in the apple pie thing, and she was mean to me. And the priest was kind of a curmudgeon, he was mean. We have a responsibility, right? You know, we have a responsibility. He said, pick up our cross and follow after him. Do me this favor. 2 weeks, go to St. Pat's, get fed, and feel like $1 million. 2 weeks, go to that parish where nothing's going on. Force yourself to be an usher in that parish. You know why? Because people are kind, they just don't realize it. You'll break them down, and they'll say, well, that's how someone of your friends will say, that guy's 31 years old, and he's an usher, and the head usher, you know, these people take this stuff so seriously sometimes. They mean kindness, they just don't know how to do it, so you'll help them with that quite a bit. Find a cool priest, a priest that you love, right? Find a priest that you love and find out where he says daily mass. And say, look, Father, what I want to do is get a group of men or women together and come down and kick it around. We do it in Pittsburgh, we do it for years. I call it bromenum. We get together and go to the bottom of the church. Last week we had 52 guys there, right? And sometimes the priest comes on, sometimes he can't, but the cool priest is engaging. And everybody starts to say things they wouldn't say normally. I'm concerned about the deepest, most painful things in my life, about my family, and you realize everybody's got a cross. So I think it's that action plan that's unbelievable. And I'll close, I think, this. I want to live with joy. Live with joy. Be a reflection of God's beauty. If you don't know stories that are great, ask Father his story. How did he come to the priesthood? That's fascinating. If you get the Sisters of Life magazine, it's filled with joy stories. I do want to tell you one before I close, and keep this in the back of your mind. This is one you could use. It was a Hail Mary story. It's pretty simple. One of our priests at Pittsburgh is a big strapping guy, played college football at a high level. He came back to town, and one of his high school teammates called him, they're about 42, and said, I do not know what to do, Father Joe. I don't know what to do. He said, tell me. He was really upset. He said, 3 weeks ago I left my office. I was jogging down the street. I went by a house in the neighborhood. Pittsburgh's a small, town, nothing like this big metropolis we have here. And for some reason, he said a Hail Mary. He said a Hail Mary as he was jogging down the street. Unusual for him, didn't break stride, didn't make a sign of the cross. 3 weeks later, he was jogging by the same house. He's probably in the same exercise program I had been on in the past, every 3 weeks, whether I needed to or not. But he was jogging by the house, and he heard someone say, Sir, sir, sir. He's like, I'm not from this neighborhood. She couldn't be talking to me. Finally, she screams, you jogger, stop, she screams. And he turns around, and a little old lady, 86-year-old lady, is running down the street without her coat on. This is last February. And she comes down to him, and he thinks, are you okay, ma'am? Did someone fall in the house? How can I help you? She said, no, I'm fine. I need to speak to you. I need to speak with you. And she said, I need to talk to you. You saved my life. And he said, I get it now. She's crazy. How do I get her back in her house? How do I, where's a neighbor? Where's the police? How do I help? How do I diffuse this situation so I can finish my jog? And she said, no. He said, I'm not your nephew, ma'am. She said, I know exactly who you are. I know exactly who you are. She said, 3 weeks ago, I had a massive stroke. I was in my house, and they took me to St. Clair Hospital, which is only a few minutes from my office. And I was in a coma at St. Clair Hospital. And while I was in that coma, Christ appeared to me. And Christ looked at me and said, "You are going to come to heaven today." I thought it was this, but it was here, like this. "But this man prayed to my mother today. And as a result, you are not going to come to heaven today." That's all she had. She went back home. 3 weeks later, she's sitting on her couch, and she says, "That's the guy. And he's not getting off the street." Okay? And he was overwhelmed with it. What do I do with this? And he's thinking, who did I tell I prayed a Hail Mary? Did I tell my wife? No, I never crossed the street. I never made the sign of the cross. Nobody knew that I prayed the Hail Mary. Of course, everybody that mattered knew, right? And he said to Father Joe, "Father Joe, what do I do?" And Father Joe said, "First of all, breathe. Secondly, understand Our Lady does intercede on our behalf. And understand what we do is real. It's not kabuki theater. We're praying to Mary to intercede on our behalf, and she does. And understand the joy and beauty and just the love that Christ has for us. That's what we have to have, that joy in our hearts." Now, I was talking to Sister Mary Elizabeth from the Sisters of Life about that, and if you Google it, guys, the power of one Hail Mary, the joggers there, the lady that lived in the house, is a beautiful story. But when I asked Sister Mary Elizabeth, I said, "Sister, what are your thoughts on this?" She said, "It's a beautiful, beautiful story of Our Lady's intercession." But she said, "I pray about 1,100 of those a day, and I don't get that kind of response." But it's real, and that's why we should have that kind of joy. Thanks.
Thank you. What a beautiful note to end on. Always trusting everything to Our Lady's powerful and motherly intercession. I'd like to open the floor to questions that anyone might have. There's a microphone just over there on the side, and so please feel free to come up with a question for any of or all of our panelists. We just ask that you please do make it a question, and please to keep it as brief as possible.
Thank you all for being here. One thing I think about a lot is, regardless of people's place in life, there's kind of this fog that kind of builds up over time. We don't know, we think we're doing the right thing, but it's very difficult when you're in the fog of war to know if you're doing the right thing, whether you are a young person, kind of having that tug to go back to the faith, or you're running a company and you're contemplating how you should compensate your employees. How do you make sure that you have a regiment to remember to step back and kind of clear away the fog? Like, how do you do that? You mentioned adoration. Just what are your tactics for remembering to clear things out and be honest with yourself?
I think just when you hopefully are prayerful every day, take a few moments to just reflect on yourself. What's making you happy? What are some goals that you need to really think about? What are some things that you need to improve upon? And I think in the entrepreneurial world, certainly I've many times I've talked about the leap of faith. It really is a leap of faith. So much of what we do in our lives is a leap of faith. And I just ask you to look within yourself and try to do it every day. And just, because every day is a bit of a leap of faith, right? Everything we do, we're crossing the street believing those cars are going to stop right at the red light, right? I mean, but really take it in every day and just say, what do I hope to get at it today? And then at the end of the day, where did I maybe fall short, and where do I need to pick it up tomorrow to hopefully be that much better?
That's good stuff. I would also just say, I would think I like to think to myself, what would Our Lady do, right? We opened a maternity home in Pittsburgh. It's funny. We have a room full of diapers, guys. I mean, we got more diapers than a Costco. We have a ton of diapers. And someone came by and said, "I would like some diapers," a needy mother. And one of our lovely volunteers said, "I couldn't give her the diapers. She didn't fill out the form." And I thought, well, we have enough diapers to last us well into the next century. And why do we have the diapers? We have the diapers to give them to moms in need. So the fact that the form couldn't be filled out right, and I thought to myself, it's called Mary's Place, right? So in our brain, we're supposed to say, what would she do? What would Christ do? It's hard to, and that's a high bar. I understand that. But, maybe I like to say what would my first reaction be, and then do the opposite of that. That's probably a good way to do it too, But
I think to your question, daily mass will help a lot. If you start going to daily mass, I think that'll provide a little bit of what you're looking for. And then the person that you love, the person you're dating, the person you're married to, or even, a family member that you're fond of, if you're praying with that person together every day, I think you'll find that it's a more powerful prayer experience than just doing it on your own.
Next question, please.
Thank you so much. It's been very insightful. Specifically, I have a question for Mr. Kilb, but I suppose all of you can answer. Your point about focusing on family really touched me, and I'm curious to understand whether is it considering the society we live in today, where if you're in a more rural place versus a city, you have the possibility of like homeschooling your children, or I guess more time on your hands, and your money goes farther. Is your perspective that that's more, at least for maybe me or anyone else here, is that a good perspective to have, to be in a rural place where you can actually have more time versus being in a place like New York where you can get a lot of money, but you ended up, it ends up disappearing away very fast, and you don't have a lot of time on your hands. So,
I'm so glad you asked me that question, because a big part of my life was not wanting to have a long commute. Early in my life, I thought I'm probably going to be one of these people that works a lot of hours, but I'm always going to want to be with my family as much as I possibly can. So what part of your day might be a waste, meaning you're not really getting work done and you're not spending time with your family? And for me personally, that was a commute. And I was really blessed during college and right after college to live with my grandmother. And she taught me just incredible life lessons. I lived, in a walk-up apartment, and she was way into her 80s and still somehow getting up all those flights of stairs. And I remember one time, talking to Granny, and Granny said, "Why would you want to be on a train or a bus for hours every day going someplace when you'd rather just be with your family?" And I thought, that makes a lot of sense. So when I got my job at Bloomberg and realized I was probably going to stay there, I thought, how could I live within walking distance of Bloomberg? And I could tell you that, even if you worked 12 hours a day, if you didn't have a commute or your commute was 15 minutes to walk home, I so decompressed during that 15-minute walk home. And I knew that no matter what, if my kids needed me, if I got that, once in a while call from school, hey, your kid's sick, and you come pick them up or something, I wouldn't be that far away. So I'd say whether you live in the city, and look, I grew up in the city, and I'm a city kid at heart, but it doesn't necessarily have to be urban versus rural, but try to find a way that, and look, more and more these days, people are working from home some percentage of time. But I think if you could avoid a lengthy commute and make your time as productive as possible, either with your family or working, that's kind of a balance.
That's perfect. One thing I would do too, when you're young and you're building your career, you're under the mistaken impression that everything matters. I should go to dinner with these prospective clients because it has value. I should join this other organization because it has value. Over time, I think I would suggest you as early as possible, start analyzing every situation you're in. Does this activity move the ball forward for my family, my business, or my faith? If it doesn't, stop doing it. Just dumb. It's unnecessary. I mean, going to dinners one time, traveling to meetings and thinking, what am I doing here? I just wasted 3 days. I could be with my family. I could be somewhere else. I could be moving the ball forward. If it isn't valuable, how many of you have been at meetings going, why am I here? Why did I do this? Why am I doing this to myself? Well, it's important. No, it's not. It's dumb. Cut it all out, and what'll happen is, guess what? Then when you're in the room with people that are like you and think like you and you admire, guess what happens? Your career elevates much, much, much quicker. I remember going to cigar dinners. I hate people. I hate cigars. I hate the whole thing. I'm like, why am I here? What am I doing here? How is this valuable to me? And they were telling raunchy jokes and passed the mic. I'm like, everything about this I hate. It took me 3 years to say, what am I doing here, right? So I'm telling you, cut everything. Ask that question. Am I moving the ball forward for my faith, my business, or my family? If I'm not, it's done.
Yeah, start saying no more. That's the only thing I can say is, and it might be tough at first, but once you start saying it, it gets a lot easier. Track how much you say no. Say, like evaluate it, measure it, and try to do more of it. Cut stuff out. Have a to-don't list in addition to a to-do list.
If somebody said, I'm sorry, John, I'm with you. If somebody says, let's meet and talk about this, let's meet for dinner. Say, well, you know what? Why don't we just do a Skype, a WebEx at 5:15? You'll be over at 5:30. Everybody's happier, right? Everybody's happier. That's so powerful. It's unbelievable.
Maybe one last question if there is an interest.
I got one last one for you. You ready? I was up at the Sisters of Life today. I want everyone to remember this one. This is a great one. Sister Anna Stay told this one. You guys may know her. And by the way, if you're wallowing in your self-pity, go give a poor person a sandwich, right? Was that Matthew 25 that said, what you do for the least of me, you want to have something that fills you up, go volunteer. Give a sandwich away. Walk with somebody else and realize how blessed we all are, thank God. Sister was walking down the street in New York. She was walking by herself about a year ago, walking down the street, and she heard someone behind her screaming in a demonic type voice, I'm going to get you, I'm going to get you, I'm going to get you. She said, oh, my, somebody's ill out here. Finally, she heard him say, I'm going to break your neck. I'm going to break your neck. You nun. Yes, right behind her. She couldn't cross the street. She couldn't, you guys realize that there's a lot of traffic here, right? She couldn't cross the street. What do? I have to, what do? I don't know what to do. And she said, she was afraid for a moment. She said, why am I afraid? And she spun around and she put up her right hand and she said, brother, peace. And as she said that, he was knocked back 4 feet to his knees. I said, sister, you mean he stepped back to his knees? She said, absolutely not. He was knocked back to his knees. And he was cowering, saying, his voice changed. I apologize, sister. Sister, I'm sorry. Forgive me, sister. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I said, how did you muster the courage to do that, sister? How did you find the courage to do that? She said, well, first of all, I couldn't go into traffic. And she said, I knew as I stood there with the authority of my baptism, all I needed was the Holy Spirit. So call upon that strength. It's innate in all of us. We're inherent by our baptism. Call upon that strength, and the sky's the limit. So God bless you.
Father, if I could just a couple invitations before for my final thought here. One, join the Catholic Finance Association at our website, catholicfinanceassociation.org. We'd be honored to have you. Again, our definition of financial professional is rather stretched, so I'm sure you're all quite eligible. And if your schedule is available, the first weekend of May 2nd through the 4th, Catholics at the Shore. That's Chris and I's retreat for Catholic professionals. You'd have a great time down there. CatholicsAtTheShore.org. Be sure to join us if your schedule allows. Thanks, Father.
And don't mess with the Sisters of Life. Well, I'm sure this evening has informed and challenged and inspired and educated all of us to live our lives more authentically, more integrally, more honestly in the light of the truth who is Jesus Christ. And if it has done that and given us some food for thought and perhaps a clearer path to what God is calling us to be, then it is certainly time well spent. And so, gentlemen, thank you for your time, for your insights, for your expertise, for your wisdom, and for your inspiration this evening. It's been a true pleasure. And with that, I will turn it over to Joe, who I think is going to give us our closing prayer.
Father, I'm actually going to ask you. Thank you, guys. Let's do one round of applause. One more. We'll do a lot. Thank you. I would love to guarantee that they're all going to be like that, but this was very special. Thank you, Chris. John, thank you for coming in from Pennsylvania. Father, thank you. Karl, thank you for being so nimble in the final 11th hour. We'll be at 310 Bowery right after this. I'd like to also invite my team. We'll do some photos. And then our February retreat will be on the 17th at St. Joe's. So I will ask Father to actually lead us in final prayer. Thank you all for coming. God bless all of you, and we'll see you soon. Thanks.
In a word of thanks to Chris, sometimes we priests need to be reminded of the power and efficacy of our own blessing, and so I will conclude with that. But Heavenly Father, we thank you for the inspiration, the good thoughts and resolutions you have imparted to us this evening. May we put them into effect as we strive to live out our lives in the light of your truth, in the healing grace and honesty of your love. And we commit ourselves entirely to you through the intercession of our Blessed Mother, and we ask all of this through Christ our Lord. Amen. The Lord be with you. May Almighty God bless you, the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you all.